Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Well, ghosting is a term that has always been associated with the dating scene. However, employers being ghosted by employees is a development which has recently been experienced by businesses across Ireland. Damien McCarthy from HR Buddy joins us now to discuss this phenomenon. Damien, you joined us on Business Matters recently to discuss a range of HR topics, but I've invited you to join us this morning to discuss the concept of employee ghosting. We've heard about ghosting in a dating context, but what does it look like from an employment perspective?
Yeah, Carol, as you said, the term ghosting is a phenomenon more commonly seen in the dating world, but it is now becoming an increasing problem for employers. So employers across the country, Carol, are seeing a rise in job candidates ghosting them. Now, job ghosting is a term that HR professionals would be aware of, and I suppose it can work both ways, where by way of the employer ghosting employees. But what we're seeing at the moment now, because of a stretched labour market, is potential job candidates, I suppose, job ghosting their potential new employers.
And how big a problem is this employee ghosting now across Ireland, and is it more prevalent in some sectors over others?
It isn't particularly a new phenomenon worldwide, Carl, but again, because of the environment at the moment, we're seeing more and more of it. And really, we're seeing it actually across the board. But there is some sectors being impacted more than others. So, for example, hospitality and construction would very definitely be two, where I suppose it's going beyond just, potential candidates ghosting their potential new employer. It's actually current employees that are doing it, because there is such choice inside in those and such demand for staff and for people inside in those industries, that people can actually walk out of one job and into another. So you're getting circumstances whereby employees aren't even working out their notice or giving the notice period as per their contract of employment to their employer and just moving jobs.
Is it a worrying sign that more and more employees are ignoring their contractual obligations with regard to providing notice?
Well, it is, and it's a headache for employers. Now, I suppose, what can employers do? Well, unfortunately, if someone doesn't work out their notice if they don't turn up for a job interview, there isn't a whole lot of protection in employment law for the employer. If it were the other way around, there's a whole more protection for the employee. But I think what employers have to ensure is that they have a system in place through their recruitment and onboarding processes, I suppose, which maybe could save them from falling foul to this. And a lot of companies actually, Carl, have brought it back to the more traditional kind of face-to-face interviews and now stay away from interviews online, because they feel that there's more of a personal or emotional transaction in bringing the potential candidate in to meet them face-to-face, and I suppose less maybe opportunity for the potential candidate then to job ghost them.
What else can employers do to be able to overcome or tackle this issue of ghosting?
Yeah, well, I suppose, it is a very competitive market at the moment, so employers do have to stand out. So try to be authentic in your outreach, maybe in your job advertisements and so on. Don't be too vague. Maybe focus on the candidate's career goals and try and, sell the job, I suppose, as a life-work balance, and benefits packages and so on, as opposed to just salary and so on. And I suppose maybe declared salary as well, because in a competitive market, I suppose you want to have a screening process very early on and not invite in candidates that perhaps aren't the right fit and maybe waste an awful lot of time inside in a competitive market going through the screening process and so on. And I suppose focus on that personal transaction there. As I was saying, some people have brought it back to face-to-face interviews, but very definitely throughout the onboarding process, it's very, very important to have an efficient process, I suppose, a personal touch with the new candidate. And most certainly when you make a job offer to a new candidate, don't give it an opportunity to go cold. because very often when there is a bit of a time lapse, there is so much competition in the market now. That's when your new hire, I suppose, gets distracted. More than likely, you're not the only employer that they've applied for new employment with. So get that onboarding process as efficient as possible and get the onboarding process done quickly.
And Damien, from a recruitment process perspective, what's best practice out there today?
Really what it's becoming about now, we're seeing so much change. We know we have so much employment legislation changes coming down the line with regards to, the right to request remote working and flexible working, the life-work balance bill. I suppose the pandemic has dictated the way that we work now, and we're also in a very competitive labour market. So really, life-work balance and benefits packages, really seem to be very, very important. Now, it is interesting also, Carl, that, 12 months ago when there was global research done, the number one reason for people changing jobs was life-work balance. Now, that same research brought out this year by Ernst & Young showed that actually number one now is salary again. So that's an interesting little trend change as well. And surprise, surprise, we're in the middle of, a cost of living crisis. So it's gone back to salary again. So it's amazing how quickly things can change just because of something like a cost of living crisis and so on. But very definitely work-life balance remains to the fore in how employers can attract employees and retain employees as well.
And once a new employee has started, what steps should the employer take to ensure that they're settling in well and they're happy in the new role?
Yeah, well, I think, as always, Carl, no matter what the environment is, the onboarding process is very, very important. And, the first day, the first week, the first month is vital. And I suppose, that your kind of personal touch, I suppose a good induction program is very, very important. It should be clearly defined. It should be tailored to fit the role, to fit the organisation, tailored, I suppose, as a cultural fit to your organisation as well. Because I suppose an awful lot of new candidates and good candidates who start their job decide within the first week or the first month, this isn't actually the right fit for me. So I would definitely advise employers to perhaps sit down and ensure that their induction program fits, makes sense and is tailored correctly to retain the staff that they're trying to recruit and attract to their organisation.
And Damien, the life-work balance bill, you touched upon it earlier on. It's currently working its way through the Houses of the Dáil and Shannon. What's in store for us when that comes into play?
There's some big changes on the cards and legislation regards parents and carers who will be entitled to 5 days of extra unpaid leave. I suppose it's very important to mention as well, there's going to be an increase with regards to breastfeeding rights for breastfeeding workers in the workplace. I think that's actually a very important piece in the new legislation, because it's going to mean that an awful lot of employers are going to be dealing with employees returning from maternity leave and applying to take their breastfeeding breaks at work, and they can take those in 3 slots of 20, 2 slots of 30-minute breaks, or one block of a 60-minute break in any average 8-hour working day. I would have a slight worry there, Carol, also whether a lot of employers are set up for that and have the right facilities to carry out this correctly with their staff, because, as I said, an awful lot of employers will be dealing with employees coming to them looking to take breastfeeding breaks, and these are employers who will never have dealt with this kind of situation before. So I would like, I suppose, not just to see this legislation coming into law, which is very good legislation, I think everyone agrees with that, but employers also need help as well in implementing this legislation.
It's a very good point that you make in relation to that, Damien. Is COVID continuing to cause employers concern?
I suppose, Carol, as we're talking in the month of May, we've now seen, the end of supports into businesses. What I would say at the moment, from the COVID point of view, We've gone into peak season for an awful lot of businesses. We're starting to see, tourism and a lot of events happening again. And it all seems pretty good. But I think there is still an awful lot of worry out there. And I think especially after the announcement last week from the World Health Organization that Ireland can expect another COVID wave during midsummer. I suppose the worry for businesses and for employers, and indeed for all of us, is that if we are to see other variants cause a wave and high cases in the community, it's obviously going to go back into businesses and start to impact again with regard to staff absenteeism and so on. And if that was to happen in peak season for an awful lot of businesses, well, it could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. So I suppose there's a bit of uncertainty with regards what's around the corner as regards another COVID wave and other variants coming at us. And again, what I think needs to be in place, Carl, is a strategy to protect businesses and so that businesses and employers can know if high case numbers were to come again with, another COVID wave, what kind of supports would be in place. Can supports be put back in place for businesses who perhaps would have their levels of activity impacted because of staff absenteeism and so on? It's a very important part of the year. An awful lot of industries such as the tourism and hospitality industries and so on need a really, really good summer in 2022. And I suppose what's not in place at the moment is a strategy to protect against future variants, which I think needs to be in place.
And of course, it is a challenging recruitment market for employers across many sectors. I'm asking you to take out the crystal ball for a second now, Damien. How long more do you expect this to continue for?
Well, I suppose I think 2022 is going to be a kind of peculiar year, and that may carry through on into 2023. There's a lot of external factors impacting upon business. The cost of living crisis, obviously what is happening with the war in Ukraine is having a certain impact as well. We're coming out of, or we're saying that we're coming out of a pandemic, but we still may have some shockwaves with other variants and so on. And I suppose businesses have seen the end of certain supports available to them and so on. We were always going to have a kind of peculiar 2022 and maybe going into an unpredictable 2023 because of a worldwide health pandemic. So there's no real surprises there. So businesses have to be very, very careful, and indeed things may stay, kind of uncertain. But at the moment, for maybe 18 months or so, to answer your question, Carl, I wouldn't be surprised. But I would hope that we can all come out the right side of that. Most certainly at the moment, it is uncertain times. There is also an awful lot of employment legislation being thrown at employers at the moment as well. So I would, I suppose, sympathise with employers at the moment. It's a very hard place to be. But hopefully, at the moment, most businesses are doing well. They're standing up. Things are getting busy for the summer. That has a knock-on impact across all services and all businesses. So if we can get through 2022, we may see a better 2023.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Damien McCarthy from HR Buddy, and I'd like to thank Damien for providing us with an update into the world of HR.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast.